So guys, what it really boils down to is if you're going to invite a woman into your life, you want to be very, very careful and selective about who you let into your inner circle, especially if it's on a long-term basis. If you let the right woman in, she can really improve your life. She can add some value. She can be a complement to your life. If you bring the wrong woman in, she can make your entire life a total train wreck. So you have to be very, very selective about who you're going to let in on your inner circle. Got a crazy video for you today.
She's not yours, it's just your turn. A woman should be a complement to your life, not the focus.
Do the work.
Women do not care about your struggles. They hang out at the finish line and they pick the winners.
What is up, my brothers from another mother? All right, in this video, we're going to be dealing with female promiscuity and why it's something you need to be attentive to as a man. It is one of the things that I get the most flack for. In that list of 20 red flags that I published for free in my upcoming book, number 11 was talking about notch count and female promiscuity, and a lot of people lost their minds. Men were very confused. They were saying things like, well, if men can do it, then why can't women too? And women were saying, well, if men can do it, why can't women too? And I'm going to explain why in this video with some cold, hard fact. Let's hop right into it. The main reason is it boils down to her ability to pair bond over a long-term basis and dissatisfaction reported in the relationship for both men and women goes up dramatically as her notch count goes up. Interestingly, those figures don't correlate to men. The biggest difference between men and women specifically is men are born as nothing. We need to create value. We need to learn competency skills. Men generally are viewed as success objects by the world and by women. Women, on the other hand, are more valued for their beauty. I think it was observed by Dr. Warren Farrell in his book, The Myth of Male Power. He said that women are sex objects and men are success objects. And I think that holds true. So women's value comes from her preserving herself, her beauty, and her notch count, whereas men, on the other hand, it comes from developing competency skills. So people are going to get mad. Oh, why does it have to be different? Why can't it be the same for everybody? Blank slate equalism does not exist, and I'll explain exactly why in this video if you hang around till the end. So I'm going to go over here to my screen. We've got a study from the Institute of Family Studies. And let's see here. Reporting of one lifetime sex partner has dropped dramatically over the years. You guys can find it. You can Google it. It was published in October of 2018. But essentially, these lines here represent the number of basically lifetime sexual partners by gender, so male, female. Back in the 1920s, you had basically had an almost 80% chance of marrying a virgin. Today, reported, it's around 45%. Now, I'm not sure how accurate this data is because I have not met a female virgin since high school, if I'm being honest. Again, this is reported data, so they're relying on the honesty of the people disclosing the information. I would suspect that these numbers are probably quite a bit different, and the data that I'm going to show you following up after this is going to reflect that. But let's just assume that this is true for the time being. So you'll actually notice over here that the number of men reporting getting married as virgins is actually going up, which is interesting. I think that men are having a hard time. Well, we know for a fact men are having a hard time in the sexual marketplace getting good results with women. We've known that for a while. There's been a lot of studies that have been published on that. You guys can Google that. But just as an overview from 20,000 feet, this has changed over time. And we've seen this change as a function of society embracing more liberalized sort of terms and lifestyles. And we've been basically telling women to act more like men. You know, since 60s or 70s or so, roughly, I would estimate. But you know, they've been told to, you know, work more, put off, you know, childbearing years. They've been told to get degrees. You see a general masculinization of the feminine in society. And that's just the trend that we're heading on. So it's really no surprise that you're going to see this. Now, how does that affect the ability to pair bond over a long period of time? And why am I telling guys that it's a red flag? Let's hop into that. So with this next chart over here that I'm going to show you, this is the relationship between sexual history and marital satisfaction. So again, this is reported data. A woman that has had one partner is reporting greater marital satisfaction than one that's had several partners, in fact. Again, the line for women is quite a bit different from that of men, men generally report a greater level of marital satisfaction, regardless of notch count. I mean, like you can even see over here at this point over here, there's a spread of about 15% practically. So it's important to note that that relationship does exist, and it does get worse as the number of sexual partners increases. Again, satisfaction should be high, but over time, sorry, not over time, but as the number of partners increases, it actually gets worse. And women are far below men when it comes to this. So it seems to have a greater effect on women. So that's one of the things that you have to consider as a guy. Now, one of the things that isn't included in this study, I've seen it in another study somewhere else, but there's a direct relationship between the age at which she lost her virginity and the number of sexual partners. And basically it looks like this. So if she was a young teen, let's say 14, you meet her at 30 and you decide to get married, have a couple kids, you know, white picket fence and all that sort of stuff. If she's had her first sexual encounter at a very young age, at 14, let's say, and was in no long-term stable relationships, who knows what her notch count is? Could be 30, could be 50, whatever, it doesn't matter. That is a lower value woman to a guy than a woman that preserved her virginity until, I don't know, early 20s, let's say 22, and was in one long-term relationship for 8 years during that period of time before you met her and you decided to get married and have kids. She would be essentially a better prospect if you wanted to have children with somebody. So the ability to pair bond goes down, dissatisfaction increases. All right, so the next thing that I want to cover with you guys is the increased reporting of personality disorders as it's associated with notch count. So as female promiscuity goes up, there's higher reports of personality disorders, depression. There's a massive increase in substance abuse that's directly correlated to promiscuity in women. So it reveals over here, according to borderline personality disorder status with the BPD personality scale diagnostics questionnaire, we found that the mean number of sexual partners among positive participants was nearly double that of negative participants. So there is a direct correlation between personality disorders and promiscuity. So as it correlates to substance abuse, there was a strong association between substance abuse and interpersonality anxiety stemming from possibly failed sexual partnerships, which of course lead to abuse, and it says especially in women. So there's no direct correlation with men specifically, but it did show up a lot with women. Again, guys, these are all studies that you can find for yourself. Just use Google, it's your friend. So one of the other problems that goes along with that is if you have a woman involved in your life that you invite into your life personally. And I always tell guys to make sure that they're very careful about who they invite into their inner circle. You should spend at least a year or two with a woman before you decide if you want to invite her into your life on a long-term basis, if you want to have kids with her. I'm not a big fan of marriage. I've talked about this a lot on my channel. You can search, for videos on that. It's quite hostile towards men. But specifically, your chance of divorce and ending up in a situation where you have an unhealthy relationship with a woman with a personality disorder, if she's promiscuous, goes up dramatically. These are facts. These are not things that I'm making up. They're factual things that we know based on studies. If we have a guy that has a choice between two women and one's got a very low notch count and lost her virginity quite later on in life versus guy B, you could take two identical twins who wifes up somebody that lost her virginity at quite a young age and has a bigger notch count. The chances of, twin A being happier than twin B are significantly higher. Twin B has a higher probability of marrying somebody or getting involved with somebody on a long-term basis that could have substance abuse issues, that could have a personality disorder, that could be very difficult to deal with over a long-term basis. The other problem with that as well is when women have a promiscuous past, they also have a higher chance of not being able to stay faithful over a longer period of time. It's a lot easier for them to leave and go to the next relationship. It's not that likely that they're going to want to stay and do the work or take ownership if they have a past or a history of quickly moving from one guy to the other over in rapid succession. Now, one of the things that a lot of guys don't understand is they often like to ask women, well, how many guys have you been with? I think it's usually women that ask guys that first, if I'm being honest. And I think it's because what they're trying to do is they're trying to assess you as far as suitability. It's basically a shit test to see if you know your stuff and if you're somebody that's in need or desire, if you will. And because we try to assess each other's notch count, it's pretty interesting. But as far as women go, when you start asking her for it, she's going to start giving you numbers. And usually guys tend to overestimate what their notch count might be, whereas women tend to underestimate. And I'll tell you why. Because women generally only keep track of, in their head anyway, based on their own experiences and their reality, longer term relationships, and the like of that. Something that has some sort of meaning. There's also a higher probability for guys that she might have been alpha widowed, meaning she's still got an unhealthy attachment or pining for a guy from her past that might have let her go. Setting that aside, though, they're generally not going to reveal relationships or sexual encounters that include things like friends with benefits, threesomes, lesbian encounters, during her travels to Vegas and Europe for the summer and stuff like that. That's where these terms, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas sort of thing, are coined from. So you have to understand you're not going to get the truth, and trying to estimate it is going to be quite difficult. I mean, one of the easiest way to do it is if she was in a long-term relationship for 10 years, and before you met her, there was really nothing else going on in her world. There was no travel. There was no, staying at university for 5 to 7 years or something like that in dorms with girls and frat parties and weekends away and all that sort of stuff. You can probably assume that the promiscuity level is going to be quite low. But on the other hand, if she lived by herself, you meet her at 38, she's traveled around the world, she's had very low indications of long-term relationships or any absence of them completely in the past, you can pretty much guess that the level of promiscuity is going to be quite high. So for guys, it's not that easy to assess, but if you use a little bit of, that coconut that's, rolling around in your noggin, you should be able to assess somewhere what the notch count would look like. So guys, what it really boils down to is if you're going to invite a woman into your life, you want to be very, very careful and selective about who you let into your inner circle, especially if it's on a long-term basis. If you let the right woman in, she can really improve your life. She can add some value. She can be a complement to your life. If you bring the wrong woman in, she can make your entire life a total train wreck. So you have to be very, very selective about who you're going to let in on your inner circle. You should definitely vet for promiscuity. I've given you some good useful tips in this video. If you haven't downloaded my free chapter on red flags, pinned in the top comment of this video, actually I'll put a card up on the top right as well, so it's easier if you're on mobile. Just opt into that list and you'll get that, and you'll also be notified when my book is published, so you can get a copy of it. It's basically going to be a collection of experiences and stories that will help guys, lead a better life, essentially. Anyway, give this video a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. Am I right? Am I wrong? If there's somebody that needs to see this video that might be questioning promiscuity and how it might matter. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of correlation as far as, damage to men over a long-term basis. In fact, there's even a lot of guys that commented and postulated in some of those posts that women have dumped them because they had such a low notch count. I think that men being desired by women and having experience with women is a fitness indicator. And it's basically social proof. It just proves that you're in demand, that you're a guy of some value. Whereas with women, it seems to have direct associations with a lot of things like personality disorders, low levels of satisfaction in long-term relationships, a difficulty to pair bond over a long period of time. So it's certainly something to consider. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Leave me a comment below. See you guys in the next video. Peace.